Tonight, I'm going to go through a series of events that Pastor said that caused the United Kingdom to split into two, the Northern and Southern Kingdom, the House of Israel and the House of Judah. So there was this prophet named Samuel. We learned about him with Pastor Ann, um, and Pastor's wife about he was the son who Hannah prayed for, and she promised to God. Um, he was the judge over all of Israel, all 12 tribes. He was getting old, and then he made his two sons, Joel and Abiah, judges over all, but they were not at all like their father. They were motivated by money, they took bribes, they perverted their judgment. And so the elders wanted Samuel to give them kings. And Samuel um, didn't really like that. And he was like really upset about it. So he took it to God and prayed about it and asked him. And then God told him that they are rejecting his ruling and his judgments and reigning. And he brought um or sent, and they've been doing that since he brought us out of Egypt. And he gave Samuel a prophecy to share with everyone, if they were to have kings reign over them. Samuel told them that this king, he will take your sons, he will make them drive your horse chariots, he and some of those sons will run before the chariots as if they were the horse. The king will appoint his captains over us by thousands and fifties, so that they can run back to so that his captains can run back to him and telling them everything that was happening. This king would make us reap his harvest and make his war instruments and instruments for his chariots. He will take the daughters and make them bakers and cooks and take all the fields, the even the very, very best of the fields from vineyards and olive yards, and give them to his servants. He will take tenth of the seed of vineyards and give them to his officers and his servants. And he will take all the men and maidservants and make the young men and the donkeys and use them for his work. And he'll take tenth of the sheeps and give it to his servants. And then we would cry onto their king, and he would not hear them, and the Lord will not hear them. And they didn't care. They just shrugged off Samuel and saying, "But we will have our kings, and they will judge over us like the other nations and go fight our battles for us." So God was like, "Okay, let them have their king." And sometime later, we weren't really split, but the tribe of Israel were following Saul, but tribe of Judah had anointed David over them because God had rejected Saul, which is a whole nother series of events on of its own. And David, or yes, sorry, David reigned over Judah for 7 years in a city called Hebron. And once Saul was ended, those other tribes came to David, reminding him that they were his flesh, and reminding him that God said to that he is to be their captain over them. And David made a deal with them, with the elders in front of the Lord, and he became their king and reigned for 33 years in Jerusalem. There, the 12 tribes prospered. The king and King David had his son Solomon, and they were living even better. And we all had peace. There was peace all around him. Solomon had dominion over regions and the kings all around him. And every day he was getting presents. Um, and I mean, a large amount of presents. Every day he was getting tens and thousands of our current measurements of grounded wheat, hundreds of sheep, deer, bucks, gazelles, chickens, turkeys, ducks, and like tens of ox a day. That was just his amount that was given to him just a day. But King Solomon loved many strange women from many different nations that the Lord said to us to not be with them because they will turn our hearts from our God to theirs. But when Solomon was old, his turned out his wives did turn away his heart from our God to theirs, and he even built high places for those abominations in the hills before Jerusalem. He burnt incense for them and sacrificed to those gods. God was angry with him because he had came to Solomon twice and commanded him to not do these things, and but Solomon didn't listen to God. God then told Solomon, because these things you've done and not kept my covenant and statutes, I will surely take the kingdom away from you and give it to your servant, but not right now during your days of ruling, but because of your father David's sake, my servant, but I will take it out of your son hands, and but not all the tribes, for the sake of your father David and for Jerusalem's sake. So then comes the split of the kingdom. After some time and rebuilding a wall from a break in the city, Solomon sees a strong man who was industrious, and his name was Jeroboam. While I was reading this, I nicknamed him Jero because I can't keep saying this. But his mother was a servant of Solomon. He made him a ruler over the house of Joseph. Jero was walking out of Jerusalem when this prophet Ajah found him there, and they were alone. Ijah took a new garment that he was wearing and he ripped it into 12 pieces, told Jero to take 10 pieces, and he told him the prophecy that the Lord told Solomon, that the Lord will give him the kingdom from Solomon and give him 10 tribes, but because of David and Jerusalem's sake, Solomon would keep one, but not during his days, but during his son days. And then I will give you the 10 tribes. He will be king over Israel, and told Jero if he kept God's statutes and commandments like David, he will be with him and build him a house like David and give Israel to him. Uh, for Solomon's Because of Solomon's behavior, God afflicted David's children, but not forever. When Solomon heard that Jero received this prophecy, he wanted to end him from here, from the living. And Jero fled to Egypt until Solomon was no longer among the living. The son of Solomon, Rehoboam, which again, I nicknamed him Rio because, again, weird name. He came to the city where all of Israel were, and this town was called Shechem, to make him king. The elders sent and called for Jero because they wanted him to speak to Rio. They asked him for a lighter servitude than what his father gave them. And Rio was like, okay, everyone, let's go back to your homes for 3 days while I think about what you're asking me. Rio consulted with the elders that stood with Solomon, and they advised him, if you're good to them and you speak kindly to them, they will serve you forever. He completely abandoned that idea and asked the young men that he grew up and they advised that he grew up with, and they advised him to make their servitude heavier than Solomon did, and even has some weird choice words. So if you ever want to look at what those words are, First Kings 12, 6 through 11, they were like really rude about it. Uh, and that he should chastise them with scorpions and not with the whip like Solomon did when they weren't like doing their work and stuff like that. On the third day, Jero and all the people came to Rio, and he answered their request roughly. and told them exactly what the people he grew up with told him to say, and that he'll make their servitude heavier than his father, and their punishment will be with scorpions and not whips. And he didn't listen to the people because this was God's doing. Kind of like how Pharaoh, when when God was bringing his people out of Egypt. Once everyone were back into their tents, who all lived in Shechem, because there were some who still lived under in David's ruling or like city, and they were all back in their tents. When they realized that Rio would not hear them, he sent the man who was like a chief over them, and but all Israel then stoned him till he was like no more. And when Rio heard what happened to their chief, he got in his chariot and sped away as fast as he could. And the house of Israel rebelled against the house of David until this day. All Israel made Jero king king over all of them, and none followed the house of David but the tribe of Judah and the Levite priest and those who were that were among them, and some Benjamites who were also among house of Judah. So then this is of like the northern kingdom, they're where they got in with false worshiping and their captivity. Though he was king over the 10 tribes, like the prophecy told him he would be, Daryl was worried that if the people went to go do their sacrifice in the house of the Lord in Jerusalem, that their heart would turn against him and back to Rio, and they would end him and go back and serve Rio. So Gerald took it upon himself to create two golden calves and told the people that it's too much for them to go back to Jerusalem, and presented them the calves of the gods who brought them out of Egypt, and set one in Bethel and then one in Dan, made high places for them for these false gods, even made priests who were not sons of Levi's, and had ordained a feast day that was kind of like what they were used to, but of his own accord in time. He had them offer like burnt offerings and burnt incense in these altars. So sometime later, in the 12th year of King Oz or Azah of Judah, Hoshea began his reign over Israel in Samaria. He did evil things in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings before him. The king of Assyria came against Hoshea, and he became the king of Assyria's servant and gave him presents, kind of like how Solomon got presents from all of the dominions and regions around him. The king of Assyria found Hoshea conspiring with the Egyptian king at that time and brought him no presents that year, which he was used of him doing. So the Assyria king put Hoshea in prison and took over the land of Samaria for 3 years. And then in the 9th year of his reign, the Assyria king took Samaria and all the people in there and took them away into Assyria. There, they continued with their idolatry and began and becoming vain, acting like the people that the Lord told them not to be like, even after God had sent his prophets and to warn them about what could happen, and they refused to listen. They even caused their sons and daughters to go into divinations and enchantments like witchery, and like which this provoked God to anger. Though um they weren't too much, like the house of Judah wasn't too much better. They were following some things after the house of Israel, but um he completely removed the house of Israel from his sight, only keeping the tribe of Judah. And he delivered Israel into the hands of raiders and pillagers until they were completely out of his sight. During the kings of Judah and king of Israel, God had a prophet Hosea, he told him to take a wife who was of like the idolatry and what the Bible says whoredoms and children's of whoredoms, because the land had committed that by departing from the Lord. Hosea did as he was told, and his wife Gomer bore him a son. God named him Jezreel, meaning for yet a little while. Gomer then bore a daughter. God named her Loruhamah, meaning for I will no longer have mercy, or I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. Gomer then bore another son. God named him Loami, meaning for ye are not my people, and I will not be your God. God yet promises, though, that the children of Israel will be like the sand of many. And where he said they weren't his people, he said that they will, that's when they will know that they're the sons of the living God. And the house of Israel was swallowed up among the Gentiles, and they knew no peace. Judah, their preservation with King Hezekiah. In the 3rd year of Hoshea, King Hezekiah of Judah began his reign. He did which God thought was right in his sight. He removed all the false gods and the idols and the brazen serpent that Moses made, and he trusted the Lord. There was none like him before him nor after him. He was prosperous, and he rebelled against the king of Syria and didn't serve him, and he even took down the Philistines. He spoke to the Levites to sanctify themselves and the house, uh like in themselves and the house of the Lord, and clean out the filth out of the holy place, letting them know that they need to clean up their act and follow after God, unlike their fathers, and not be stiff-necked, and explain that this is why God's wrath has been on them. Hezekiah and the priests established a decree, making a letter to make a proclamation throughout Israel that they should come to Jerusalem to keep the Passover. The letter stated who they are and to not be like their fathers and their brothers that go against the Lord. And some of those people laughed, they mocked, but some of Asher, Manasseh, Zebulun humbled themselves and went to Jerusalem. Multiple people, many of Ephraim and Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun had not cleansed themselves before eating the Passover, but King Hezekiah prayed for them, asking for God to pardon them and everyone who that prepared their heart to seek God. And the Lord heard and healed the people. There, they all participated in the other 7 days of gladness. And there was great joy in Jerusalem. They had a blast. And if this AI photo was, if anything like it, that's somewhere I would really want to be too. Okay, so all of these things, all of these events, and this is why it matters, because when Jesus says in Matthew 5:5, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Who are we talking about? These are the questions that come up when you are reading these things out of context. So knowing this history, our events shows you. When Jesus says in Matthew 5:6, blessed are they which do hunger and thirst for the righteousness, like those who came to Jerusalem for the Passover. Or when Jesus said in Matthew 15:24, but he answered and said, I am not sent, but onto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Who are these lost sheep? Who are these people that he's talking about? Um, when the high priest Caiaphas says, and this spake he not of himself, but being high priest this year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for that nation. And not for that nation only, but that also he should gather together in one for the children of God that were scattered abroad. Who was that being scattered? And seeing as we know that there was a split, but know that there now is to be one as one child of God. Um, in Acts 2:36, therefore let all the house of Israel know assuredly that God hath made the same Jesus, whom he has crucified, both Lord and Christ. In James, when James greets us, saying, a servant of God and the Lord Jesus Christ to the 12 tribes that were scattered abroad. Or when Peter greets us, Peter, who is an apostle of Jesus Christ, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. And when in Romans says, who are Israelites, who pertaineth the adoption and the glory and the covenant and giving of the law and the service of God and the promises. These are the things that we think about. These are the words we think about when or that or is questioned when you are reading these, and knowing the history brings you to a better understanding of these words. Praise the Lord. Thank you again for your time. Appreciate it.